And you know what else everyone wants more of? It is the Hall of Famer Craig Way. Malpal, let's head over to the hotline and bring on the Hall of Fame announcer. You can see him on 104.9 The Horn down in Austin, on Light the Tower, on Bally Sports Southwest High School Scoreboard Live, and right here every Tuesday for what Tepper hates, as I call, TUESWAYS. Craig, how are you today, man?
You know what? This show just instantly just skyrocketed up in its intelligence, its popularity, and I'm just absolutely honored and thrilled to be on with the two of you. And I love how when you went to the hotline, whereas we always hear Pickle, let's go to the hotline. In this case, we hear now, pal, let's go to the hotline.
I love it.
I love it.
It is always fun. Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate any slander towards Greg Tepper. But, Craig, I've got to ask, over there on San Jacinto Boulevard, are we hearing Bijan for Heisman chants going yet?
Oh, that rumble's been going on a little bit here and there, I think, Ashley. And he put it this way. He puts himself in position with ESPN's College Game Day, showing up in Dallas this week, and going up against the sixth-ranked team in the country in a game of that national scope and magnitude. If he has the kind of game that he had against TCU last Saturday, this coming Saturday, I think he's squarely in the Heisman conversation. But, of course, that's far easier said than done than Oklahoma's defense that Texas will have to deal with. But yeah, the name is starting to get whispered, no doubt.
and of course we've got to focus on that a little bit. You've got a decent game a couple people have heard about coming up this Friday in the Red River rivalry. For this week for you, is it? You've been not dating you, but you've been doing this for a while, calling these games. Is this always a really special week for you in preparation and just kind of the vibe that you get around Austin heading into the Red River rivalry?
Well, it is, and I'll tell you this too, Pickle. It's also because from the time I was 18, I was in the Metroplex, and I went to North Texas like you did. We always heard about how special the game was. I heard about how special the game was in North Carolina when I was growing up. I remember some games back in the day, and then when I got out to Texas, in that it meant an awful lot or was pretty special to people who didn't even necessarily have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. Either side had not gone to either Texas or Oklahoma, and yet they understood the magnitude and, surrounded by the State Fair of Texas. And there's a lot of people who go down there on Saturdays, Pickle, who don't have a ticket to the game. And they go down there to soak up the environment. They hope they can get into the game. Some say that some people from Oklahoma go down there to pick up an extra weekend job, like working the ring toss or the bearded lady or running the Ferris wheel. But be that as it may, it's a special time, and everybody gets excited about this game.
Every fair needs a bearded lady. You can't convince me otherwise of that. But all right, Craig, let's go ahead and transition over into the Texas high school football world. Quite a week specifically we'll talk for a D1. Just an absolute conundrum with 3 of the top 5 teams losing. That was Argyle losing to Melissa in their first shutout loss since 2008. Cal Allen lost to San Antonio Cornerstone. Tyler Chapel Hill losing to Lindale. None of those programs want to lose. No one, I think, expected 3 of the top 5 teams to lose all in 1 week. I've got to ask you, out of those 3, which ones were you kind of most caught off guard by?
Well, I think the way in which Argyle was dispatched by Melissa, I think stunned everybody to be shut out for the first time in 14, 15 years. To have Melissa get its first victory and to do it in somewhat of a dominating fashion, I think that probably surprised me as much as anything. We've been talking about how good Cornerstone Academy is, so for them to beat a Cal Allen didn't shock me. LBJ had played them the week before and got pushed for a while before they pulled away and won, I think, 41-26. So those were the ones I think that really surprised me. I'll tell you this, too, what it does is, I was looking over not only the state rankings, but a lot of the teams, and I do this occasionally with Tepper, and I'll ask him when he's on my show about teams that might surprise him to be where they are, be it undefeated or once beaten or coming off a surprise. In the case of 4A, both Division I and Division II, we get a chance to pay attention to some teams that maybe we haven't been able to pay as much attention to, like a Huffman Hargrave,
right,
who's unbeaten, or we've been talking a little bit about Kaufman. Now that they're in the poll, maybe a little more about them. I think there's a big matchup this week. We've talked about Sinton for a while. Well, they get Port Isabel this week. We get to find out how for real PI is this week when the Tarpons play him. So those are some of the teams. And I've been on the Belleville bandwagon for a while, saying that this is a good ball club, and I think they've kind of slowly risen through the ranks, just as Van has. Van was one of the teams that beat Lindale early in the year. So I think we're starting to pay a little more attention to some of the. Oh, by the way, these teams are also in 4A, Division I, and Division II, and not just the usual suspects.
Absolutely, and I think that leads perfectly here into talking about when you look at the rest of the rankings, a lot of it was kind of chalk. Now, it was a big bye week last week, but with the funny thing, like you're saying, about not necessarily focusing on those big names, but being able to focus on other teams, is we're starting to get into that point of, for instance, a game coming up on Friday at 6 o'clock at Legacy Stadium, Katy Morton Ranch and Katy Seven Lakes, and people might be looking at that like, okay, what's the special thing there? But these are the type of games that starts to really, really have an impact on those big name schools, as in Katy, about whether they'll go D1 or D2 in the 6-8 bracket. So when you get to weeks like this, there will be some down in Austin, obviously, when it comes to Westlake and Lake Travis and all of those types of things. But when you get to weeks like this, do you start really getting excited about focusing on those other oddball games that people might not realize how big of an impact that they have really on Texas high school football as a whole?
I do. It's a great point, Pickle, and I refer to it as the trickle down. Because it's going to trickle down to where it is. If for example, if you are a fan of Westlake, of Austin Westlake, if you're a fan of Westlake, you are rooting like nobody's business for Morton Ranch this week. You want a Morton Ranch Mustang victory because you want Katy in D1. You don't want Katy. I mean, Westlake's good enough to beat Katy. Don't get me wrong; they're the number one team in the state, and I think, but it's one less obstacle along the way for them. And by the way, that all that would do is just power up Division I in Region 3 all the more, as if it wasn't daunting enough. But yes, you're right. I mean, if Morton Ranch is in there instead of Seven Lakes, then that's going to push Katy to Division I, if we're all obviously to believe that Katy and Tompkins are the other two postseason teams at a 19-6A. So yes, I do pay a lot of attention to those swing games, what could happen with teams like Brennan, which has a big Thursday night game against Taft, and then obviously they're in the San Antonio area, and then obviously with Katy or with Morton Ranch and Seven Lakes. So it's a great point.
And then moving back to a couple of those bigger names here, we'll do the game that you and Tepper love to play. And if you have the opportunity, I'll give you 3 games to teleport to one of these games on Friday night. Here's the 3, and we're going a little bit bigger schools this week. It's a pretty stinking good week in big school games. We're going to go 7:30 p.m. Friday at Highlander Stadium. You can watch the Fightin' John Kings of Longview take on Highland Park at Highlander Stadium. You can go to a 5A D1 Hell Week matchup all the way out west in Amarillo versus Amarillo Tascosa. That one at 7 o'clock p.m. Or how about you go down to District 5 4A D1, Stephenville at La Vega. Which one are you transporting to?
Wow, 3 great choices. Here's the thing. In the case of the Highland Park Longview game, you could probably go to that game, see it to its conclusion, and still have time to get to one of the other games. I mean,
You're not wrong.
That thing is going to move. I think Tep and I were saying that thing might be done in an hour 47 minutes, the way that those teams can run the ball. Probably, though, I'll tell you, the game I'd be probably most intrigued with is the one in the Panhandle, for 2 reasons. A, we find out a little more about the Sandys, if they're ready for prime time, and then perhaps we find out just how serious a contender Tasco's can be. And you can only play the teams on their schedule through the regular season, but it does beg the annual question. We asked Kim Plunk about it last week about, getting yourself prepared for that grind in the postseason, what you would have to deal with once you get beyond, say, Region 1, where maybe their biggest opponent would be Colleyville Heritage, and then you get on into that real death region of Region 2 with the likes of a Longview, a Denton Ryan, a Highland Park, those teams out of that. So, those are the tests you look for, and I think we find out a little more about the Rebels and certainly about the Sandies with that game at Dick Bivens this week.
As always, he is absolutely correct on that. But the Hall of Famer, Craig Way, thank you for joining us on every Tuesday. And, of course, you can hear his call, which we know will be fantastic, on Saturday at 11 a.m. on the Horn for the most anticipated Red River rivalry. And before that, he'll be suffering through a show with Tepper on Friday night. So, Craig, we appreciate your courage for dealing with him.
You know what? I fully expect. No, I'm demanding that there's a T-shirt that's made out of this with you and Mal on that, and it says Pickle and Mal Pal, Girls Week Out. and mass produce those. Those have to be done. I'm looking forward to that.
I love it. We
will get that done and get one right to you, Craig. Talk to you later, bud.
Take care.
There he goes, the Hall of Famer Craig Way joining us again. Big week for him, as always, be on High School Scoreboard Live and on the Horn for every day of the week on Light at the Tower, and then for the big call, the big game this weekend. So excited to hear him, and I always appreciate him checking in and ragging on Tepper with us. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.